Assalamu alaikum. Can we get our panelists up here on stage, please? You know who you are. All right, Steve, number one. What? No, you are. Yeah, yeah. We'll pencil you in the website. But yeah, please. Well, you may have to be an example for others too. Saleh. Are you guys sure you want to do this? I don't know. I mean, you're like hesitant.
I'm fine. Bring your own Coke party. Put a towel in. I need paper.
Dip in the back. I'll get you some.
That's messed up when I left. I put my towel there. Yeah, please jump. Oh, marvelous.
Could you close the door for me, please? All right, thank you everyone for coming back in.
Selfie.
Sorry, get back in a second.
All right, sorry, we have to pause for a picture time. I can do it better.
No, then it's not a selfie.
All right, okay.
I think nobody really cares about that part.
All right, thank you. We're going to be doing a peering panel now. Now, we would like to do is we would like to start with introductions. So everyone, please state your name, affiliation, and give a brief introduction of what you do and your experience with peering and internet exchange points in general.
Okay.
Try this one.
Hi, I'm Marco from the UAE Internet Exchange. I'm responsible for the business development of the Internet Exchange here in the region. Yeah, in a nutshell, we started in 2012, and I guess you will hear lots of the IX later on.
Past experience, just a little bit.
I started in 1992 with software development. In 1995, I founded my own ISP because we needed an email address. I sold that in 2010, and now I'm working as a consultant. So and in this role, I'm working as a consultant for DKIX and being responsible for UAE Exchange.
Thank you.
Well, oh yeah, it works. I'm Christian Kaufmann. I'm working for Akamai. What I do is deleting emails as quickly as I can. If I don't do that, then I actually answer some of them, which is then often peering or capacity or interconnection related. Well, besides that, Akamai is connected to like 65 plus internet exchanges, which means I have some experience from that perspective. I deal with IX actually since quite a long time. So I was running one, I was founding one, and I was on the board chairman of one IX. So I think I have a rough idea of what they are about.
I'm Steve Wilcox with IX Reach. So I've been in the industry for 16 years. I've been on the board of 2 internet exchanges in that time, and my company now, we resell or partner with 26 internet exchanges that we work with on a close basis all the time. So,
yes. I'm Saleh Mansour, a technical representative for Palestine Internet Exchange Point. I am responsible for technical issues regarding the PIX, the Palestine Internet Exchange Point, and all communication with the peers, and also to encourage the local content inside Palestine also.
I'm Hassan Nakhal. I'm a telecom engineer working for Telecom Regulatory Authority. I am in internet field about 16 years ago, and I am manager of Cairo Internet Exchange Point, as well as I am manager of department in Telecom Regulatory Authority for internet policies and technical affairs. That's okay.
Thank you. All right, so let's start out with a discussion or your thoughts on what do you believe the right strategy is in terms of peering or in this region, with local peering or regional peering or global peering? You know, what are your thoughts on? You're familiar with the. We've seen the presentations earlier today, and you see what the interconnections are and have an idea at least. So, what do you thought if we could get some ideas on what the best strategy is going forward in this region? Is it loud enough? Now it's loud enough? All right, great. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, as an internet exchange point that's operating in the region, of course, I always recommend to do as much peerings as you can, and to do the peerings as close as you can to your network. So if you're sitting in Qatar or sitting in Saudi or wherever in the GCC, I always suggest that if there is a local exchange in your country, use that local exchange. Unfortunately, there are not that many, but we know about some initiatives, so support them. And then, of course, as we want to build, or we are about to build, and a good track to build a regional hub, always suggest use the UA exchange and then look for the international ones. So still, as we have seen today, Europe is a good option for peering. I hope with our initiative we make it more and more attractive that, or more and more reasonable, and make it more and more happen that traffic stays in the region. So you should support it, I guess, I hope. But still, if yeah, keep the traffic as local as you can, and exchange as much as you can over the peering. That's the advice from, of course, from the internet exchange perspective, and also, to be honest, from my personal background, having an own IXB in Austria for years.
As Akamai is in the content business, we of course try to bring the content as close as possible to the eyeballs. That is us at home. So one of the ways is of course peering. In that case, it actually doesn't matter if it is an international, a regional, a very small one. As long as the internet exchange has enough value, and value in that case means for us that from a latency and performance perspective, it makes sense, which is most often the case, but also from the economics, it makes sense. So that is a little bit a mix between transit savings, what a deployment would cost us there, and stuff like that. So as long as I'm not paying more than I would pay for transit, probably in the same city, because then it kind of gets pointless, we peer, and we deploy to a lot of IXs. As I said in my initial statement, we had 65 IXs in the world, so it's not just the big ones we are going. We try to go to the small ones as well. But again, it kind of have to make sense from an economical model. So from our perspective, we just can encourage people to come to an IX and peer with us, because of course that is our model. And we try to bring the content as close as possible, not just to the eyeballs, but to the network as well. And this is what we do by the peering.
So would you say, just to follow up on that, are you saying that if it doesn't save you money, then it doesn't make sense?
There is always a trade-off between a performance and a cost. And let's actually state an example here. So Africa is a good example, because the price difference is even much higher than it is here in the Middle East from a transit perspective. So if...
Just elaborate on that. What do you mean by the difference? Just explain that so we're sure what you mean.
Oh yeah, I come to that. So the transit price, like in South Africa, is what, 100, 150 US dollar-ish, depending a little bit when, what you buy. So that is in comparison to Europe a huge number where you get it, sub $1, euro, depending on volume and whatever. So as Akamai needs actually transit to fill the cache before we can peer the content away, it would actually means that even if I can peer there in South Africa, just taking that as a more extreme example, then I would have to fill the cache and it costs me like 100 times more than in Europe. Is the performance gain worth 100 times? That is the question. And that every company got to answer for themselves. But yeah, if the money difference is too huge, then probably the performance, keeping it local and the extra redundancy is not worth it.
Okay.
So the question, what should the strategy be for the region? In my opinion, there should be a number of internet exchanges. Doesn't matter if you call them local, regional, international, but there should be a number of internet exchanges. And we should be looking to have internet exchanges anywhere where there's a population center. And there's two things that are going to drive that justify why you should do that. One is performance, which is similar to what Christian said. Anywhere where you've got a population center, it makes sense to have a hub where you can exchange traffic, where you can get your content from, and where it's delivered in just a couple of milliseconds out to the users. The user will have a much better experience. The second factor is price. If you're crossing an international border, you're typically going to have a higher circuit charge. Or if you're traversing a long distance within a country, it's likely to be more expensive. So you want to avoid doing that. So if you look at Europe or the US, you see exchanges popping up maybe every 200 kilometers apart, but the borders are not as significant, or they don't exist, which is why I put the second part in there about the cost. Even though we're relatively close here to say Oman or something, it would make sense to have a separate exchange there because you don't want to incur this high cost, and there's no need to incur the high cost. If each country and each central population has an exchange, then it will allow all the local operators, the local colos and the ISPs to work there and avoid typically paying, in a lot of instances, third parties. We saw in the presentation earlier that a lot of this money is just going out of the region to telcos homed in the US or somewhere, which just seems pointless. So.
Thank you.
Yes, I will talk about local strategy. In Palestine Internet Exchange Point, we set a policy document, and as a result of this document, now we have around 8 peers, 8 ISPs, 3 universities. We increased our traffic is increased from 10 to 15 megabit per second now to 1 gigabit per second. We have now our NOC team that is responsible to communicate and solve all peers' problems. I'm talking about our strategy because we are still in our initial steps in developing our Palestine Internet Exchange Point. The significant change since our last update in the last MPF was that we changed the topology from having a VLAN for each peer. Now we go to the standard IX LAN switch model. All the peers now connected on one LAN. Also, there is a significant change in the last 6 months that we bring now a GCC node. This, of course, increase the performance for all peers connected to the Palestine Internet Exchange Point. Of course, our IX now is dual stack, is IPv4 and IPv6 connected. And we made many sessions in universities also to increase awareness for the local markets of the importance of the PICs that increase both decreased cost and increased performance to local ISPs. And yes, all peers, all ISPs are now satisfied. They get the best quality and the best performance, and everything is fine so far. Yes.
Well, I forget the question.
So the question is really about, in terms of strategy, whether regional, local, when to do which, or what is the best approach?
Actually, we put our strategy in 2000 at Q4 2000, and first it was to exchange local traffic, keep local traffic exchanged local, and that put this statement clearly in license for any internet service provider in Egypt. After that, after 2007, we start to change to become not more local traffic, exchange local traffic, but to host content providers. And now we are planning for deploying a digital hub in Egypt. Okay.
In addition to our policy document, we are now also developing an SLA that describe our activities, our responsibilities for each peer. So now each peer know their responsibilities, topics, and what services they can get also from the Palestine Internet Exchange Point through SLA.
Okay. Next.
Yeah, so I have another question, or something I'd like to take your opinion on, and this is kind of somewhat follow-up to what Christian and Steve said. So Christian gave this an example of an extreme situation where the international link or the global peering was a fraction of the local peering. Now, is there a way to kind of balance this? So the cost versus performance, what would be the break point? Is it even if you have a greater cost going globally, you'll get better performance locally? What is the rule of thumb that, in your opinion, or the break point that you would decide to go locally instead of globally?
From our point of view in Egypt is customer satisfaction. As you make latency and delay minimum as you can, it will be better for penetration, increasing penetration of internet inside Egypt. So our goal is to increase quality of service, lower latency, and as well as save international bandwidth.
Okay, but that's assuming both of your customers, or both of these two customers are local within Egypt, so they can easily connect through your exchange point. But what if they need to connect to a neighboring country where there isn't, there may not be a clear defined exchange point, or the cost is actually quite high, and it's cheaper to go to Europe and back. So when do they decide to go direct, either through a regional exchange point, or to go to something more global?
It will be the price, of course, the price of connection circuits. It will be, the decision will be made based on that, because in Egypt we have a lot of content, Arab content. We have a huge, for example, media content in Egypt and news content in Egypt. So traffic between Arabic countries is not that much from our calculations. So if we go for connecting internet exchanges or connecting Arab countries, this decision will depend on the cost of circuits, the national circuits from international carriers. Maybe because our location is close to all countries, because we are close to Italy, close to Marseille in France. So delay is not that much as traffic from Kuwait, as we see in print presentation. Traffic from Qatar to Dubai, or from Kuwait to Dubai, it's going through Egypt to Europe, then come back. It's not the case with our traffic.
So Marco's eager to answer. Let's start with Marco here.
Okay.
Yeah. What I see on the exchange point, and we have here many members who are coming from outside, from all over the GCC region, that still the pricing is a main driver. So if the connection to Europe is much cheaper than the connection to Dubai, let's take Bahrain as an example, where we see that situation at the moment, and where we hope that this can be fixed later on this year, and I see some initiatives for that. But when we look at that, for these people for these ISPs, it's cheaper to go to Europe, and so yeah, they do that. They go to Europe, not to Dubai, even if it's as we have seen in the graphs of Bernd, such a higher latency. But if you ask me about the breakpoint, I think if I want to take as an example Europe, because there I see the situation that the IP transit is in some cases even cheaper than the peering. So it's even cheaper if you want to have the cheapest solution for founding an internet service provider. Yeah, take 2 or 3 upstreams, multi-home your network, have 1 POP, that's it. And you're done, and that's the cheapest solution for you. But in my experience running an own ISP, I've seen that this is not the best solution, because especially when you nothing against tier ones, they do a great job, you know, but there is some logic in behind how they build their networks, how they peer, with whom they peer, or with whom they not peer. And if you're like, I'm from Austria, so we had a big demand for German content. So most of our content was coming from Germany. And just with the tier ones, that you had no influence about full peering ports of the tier ones. You had no influence about how they route the traffic, if it's going through US even sometimes. This is true for some really very cheap tier ones. Or if they fight peering wars to each other. So you have absolutely no control. So we found out that that it was much better for us to peer as much as we can. Of course, if you have a local exchange, it's very easy because the price will be always cheaper. But if you have to leave your country, even in Europe, at some traffic level, it might not scale in matter of cost. But in matter of quality, you earn in your network and you earn for your customer. It will scale because you have some arguments in your marketing and also, again, in front of your customers. So what we started, for example, we did some IP transit selling, like Freddy Künzler is doing with Init 7. And we had been, at the end, some kind of a tier 2 with having 12 exchange points all over Europe. And I can tell you, my best example is Hutchinson in Austria. We won them as a customer. We had, and we won 70% of their traffic just because of peering. And they were multi-homed with Deutsche Telekom, with us and with Tele2. But Deutsche Telekom just don't peer. So we won the traffic. So it was revenue for us. So next to this cost argument and the latency arguments, there are also some other arguments for peering, which you need in the meantime in Europe if you want to explain people why they have to go for peering. Here in the region is very easy because the price level is very, very high. So if you can reach a lower price level, it's a no-brainer. You just go for peering, that's it. And I think this will last for a couple of years, but then we might be in the same situation like in Europe, and then we have to think about more arguments for the peering. And there are more arguments. There are strong arguments. It's control over your network, control over traffic flow, control over quality, and this is if the price is, and in Europe I'm not talking about a big difference, you know, in pricing, because we are talking about 50 cents from or even lower from a cheap IP transit versus €1 if you have low traffic on the exchange and have to backhaul it and have a rack or something like that. But it's 100%, okay.
Sorry.
Yes, in my opinion, it's both cost and performance. Because now in Palestine Internet Exchange Point, we can provide more and more cheaper prices with the same or even best performance. In Palestine, it depends on what eyeballs or what the Palestinian customers want to see. Around 40% from the Palestinian customers see YouTube. 40% of traffic is YouTube. So we realized this after the peers and ISPs start to decrease their transit internet and depends on the local exchange to provide their customer with best performance and even low price if we can compare it with the transit price they take from their upstream provider. Yes.
Christian?
So there's no magic point, you know, it's not exactly $1, $5 or so where performance makes more sense, or, you know, if you reach $49.99 then suddenly, you know, performance doesn't matter anymore or whatever. The business case is very much different for every network, and everyone got to figure that out themselves. If you are an end user network and you even, you know, have a monopoly in your region, then latency, especially for end users, doesn't really make a difference, right? They can't really go anywhere else. They're used to it to a certain point, so they're not leaving you because they can't. That is, so if you send the traffic to Europe back and forth, or if you peer here, of course they would like to peer here, but then it's not a performance question, it is a cost question. So if, funny enough, transit to Europe is cheaper for you, then this is what you do, and it's a no-brainer. If you are a VPN provider in Europe, you know, where you have a lot of interconnection density and where everything is kind of closer, then every millisecond might count because that is your selling argument, especially if there's a lot of competition. So with these two extremes, you got to figure out where your breaking point is between performance and price. This said, if we look at what actually happens here in the region, not what should happen, but what happens, then I think it is quite obvious what people choose. They choose price. For them, peering, if at all, is mainly a cost-saving exercise. If it doesn't save costs, then they send it via transit. And this is exactly the reason why we sit here on the panel, right? Because the peering is not established to the same extent for multiple reasons. That is just one of them. In that region than in other regions. That you get all the performance, control of the traffic, and all the arguments which are true on top of it does not yet count in that region to the same extent. So people here choose by price.
So would there be, is it kind of an oversimplification though to say that it's simply a comparison between price and performance? And let me explain why. I don't know if you've attended last year's peering. We had this nice presentation of Bill Woodcock where he showed that local peering, or low latency, high performance local peering can actually grow the traffic and versus peering with a high latency. So the long-term effects are very beneficial for local peering. So would that play a role in the decision? Shouldn't organizations actually consider that in deciding? Steve?
We've seen a few examples of this. So I know the presentation you mean is a good presentation. It's talking about how TCP works depending upon the latency and the size of the connection. We saw it yesterday as well. It was the HTTP acceleration presentation, and what I remember was the slide with the graphs. It was showing that your users need to have sort of 5 meg or so of usable capacity, and it'll be optimal, or at least it won't get much better. And then it was also had this latency curve, which showed that once your latency got high, and what I remember from my Google days was that we wanted everything to be under 20 milliseconds, because above 20 milliseconds things weren't so good. The interesting thing from that, looking at that curve yesterday and relating it to the economics that I used to use when I was calculating the business decision for whether to roll out or not, was that I actually had a formula. I could equate latency to dollars of revenue. So this is a company, we're talking content here, but content companies generate money from putting content in front of the users and having users click on things that brings them income. And there's actually a direct correlation between how long it takes and how much money you make. And you can graph this for different operators. Your question was about looking at the price versus the performance. So this answer that I'm giving, and Christian's answer before, is looking at it from a content perspective. There is a calculation as a content player where you can say, for this amount of money, I will generate this much revenue, and you can work it out. but it's different for everybody, and especially if you're not a content player, if you're an eyeball network, it does look very different, and it's not always easy to see. There's not many examples of monopolies here. We typically have markets where we do have some competition occurring in the market, and I think you need to, even if you're seeing very little difference in price between peering and transit, and you don't care what the latency is, let's say, but you're peering in UAAX or Europe versus just taking a transit port is almost the same. I think you have to look at a couple things. You have to look at the quality of the user experience. Do you have happy users or not? But you need to be thinking forwards, like what are your competitors doing, or what is this guy doing who's just in the process of applying for a license who's going to be your competitor in 2 years? You don't want to be the guy with an inferior network just because somebody bothered to spend a little bit more money. And let's look at it in terms of the money you're generating from your users versus the money that you're spending on these backhaul circuits. It's an order of a couple order of magnitudes different. You can invest a little bit of money to improve the performance and make sure that you stay ahead of the game and that you get known as a quality provider, and that's good for business as well.
Go ahead.
Yeah, as I said before, or I also want to what Christian is saying. I guess this is the situation like we see now is that people really look at the price here. So this is the main argument to go for peering or not. If your backhaul to Europe is cheaper, people don't think about it to go to Dubai, for example, for have this a connection to the UA exchange. But this situation is homemade. Because my first experience when I came here was I came to the operators and I got told, oh, we are already peered. What does it mean? So typically, take the situation in Saudi, they have a border to all the GCC countries all around. And so the operators told me, we are peered with everybody anyway. Over their own fiber, they had some kind of interconnection. But when you dig a little bit deeper, you have seen the picture of band. It's obvious that it cannot scale at the end of the day, and it's obvious, especially when you had been in discussion, you find out, okay, yes, there is a connection, but it's full, and there is a discussion who has to pay for the upgrade, blah blah blah, all these things. So I think the situation, or a second point I want to point out is people here spend millions of money, millions, in sea cable, new sea cables, in new terrestrial routes in order to reach Europe. So millions of dollars are spent just to reach Europe to exchange the traffic there. So what I don't understand, and it would be very easy here to overcome this connectivity situation, just in maybe sometimes don't do a prohibitive pricing for certain business. For example, for the peering business, it would be very easy because all the infrastructure, all the needed infrastructure is in place, but you always see it's the same situation because people talk to each other, but somehow they're not talking to each other. So because the point is, and I hope nobody is angry about me, but this is as a view from an outsider. I talked to an operator and he told me, yeah, I want to go to UAE and I want to go to the UAE exchange. I'm happy to do that. But this is this half circuit thing. So to reach this, and there's a high price and they don't know how much traffic. And I told him, yeah, but you reach other countries through your network, so you could transport other networks there as well, so it's business for you as well. Yeah, this is true, but we don't know. So I said, why don't you do a revenue share with them? Discuss it. Yeah, but they have to ask me. So then you talk to the next guy and he says, yeah, but they have to ask me. So there would be such a potential here for the whole region, I guess, if people not think just in the matter of the GCC, but in the matter of the world. So if you compare to Singapore, what happened there just in the last couple of years, or if you compare to Europe, what happened there in the last century, and how an open market can grow, then I think we would see a whole different picture here in a couple of years, and people sometimes have fear to lose something, but you cannot lose what you don't have, and if it comes to content, you don't have it here. There's nothing to lose for anybody here. It's just not here.
So can you elaborate, or again, we can get the opinions in general, elaborate on this hesitation? What is the source of this hesitation to go out and peer? The hesitation, the reason, so elaborate on the reason why many people are not actually interested in peering or don't see.
The first question I earned here was, why don't you do this internet exchange in our country? So yeah, my question is, why don't you do an internet exchange by yourself? Why you just don't start it? We're happy to help you. It's okay. We're happy to. You're in Euro IX forum, so you can get all the knowledge just there. It's there. So I guess it's how business is working here, how business worked here for a long time, and but I think this is going to change, and people has to be prepared for that.
So you're saying that it's just a matter of, if it's not broke, don't fix it? Is that what you think it is?
I say it's. I hope I got your question right, but so what I'm saying is that I think we started with the UAE exchange, and we also see it as the Palestine X, that we broke the existing model somehow. So this is the existing model was to have private interconnections, to work on that and play sometimes political games. There are still political games played in this region between operators and so on. We know that, but with an internet exchange, we are neutral. We built a platform where everybody can connect and just exchange the traffic. Some operators already got this, especially smaller ones. They connect because they see it as a chance to overcome these political games, to overcome pricing situation. And we saw, and what we see now, or what I see now is, just see the price drops for these half circuits to reach the internet exchange. It's coming to a level where it's very reasonable to do it. And I also see so many initiatives to connect the countries to each other. But still, much politics are played in the region, I guess a little bit too much. And if people would stop with that and just think about how to make more business out of it, this could grow really huge for the sake of all the operators here, the smalls and the big. Because, yeah, the content and the traffic drivers are sitting not here. They're all hosted outside.
Any other comments or opinions?
Yeah. So it seems, despite that we meet at MENOG and talk about and have the peering day, that the whole peering concept is still a little bit strange or unknown. I mean, people of course understand it from a rational perspective, but when it actually comes to executing it, they hesitate. I have seen. Well, we deployed at the UAEX, and actually we are at other exchanges as well here in the region. But if I open something new, let's say like in Eastern Europe, and I go to an exchange, the amount of traffic I get in a very short time is really interesting. Sometimes I figure out that I actually have sized my cluster too small because I'm surprised about the traffic which comes. I send out an email to the people, I peer with the route server, and then depending on how it goes, my cluster is like half full or full or so. That is very different here. You send an email to the people and then pretty much nothing happens, one or two reply. And then you start chasing them one by one and try to actually figure out what happens. So a certain percentage is somewhere in the connection state and doesn't really know if they are now connected or not, or they are connected but they don't peer yet and they're already there since 3 months, but it doesn't really happen anything, so they're not really in a rush. When you then talk to them and say, so we should peer, the question is, well, how much traffic do we have? And then I say, well, from my perspective, I believe it would be X. And then they're either kind of doubting it, or they figure out, oh, that's actually now too much. I can't even backhaul it. I bought a very small link because I didn't know what to expect. So they rather don't peer at all and then wait again instead of kind of upgrading or so. So it seems the whole thing is not really in a rush. It is In other markets, when you look, it is much more commodity in a pragmatic way. You know, you have a net flow, you figure out how much traffic you have to an ASN, so when you connect to that internet exchange, you have a rough idea, you know, 75% of the people will peer with me. This is this ASs, I look at my net flow, I have 25 gigs. So, you know, come with a 40 gig connection or 100 or whatever I want to do, connect, takes me 1 or 2 weeks to set up all the sessions, have the tickets with them, send emails back and forth, and you're done, next IX. You know, it's straightforward, there's no big magic. Here in the region, people seem a little bit more reluctant. It's more careful. They kind of look at it and wait a little bit and see. So it's much less commodity than in other regions.
So what is it that can be done? What do you guys think?
Well, hopefully giving presentations, sitting on panels, explaining it, showing a little bit that the outside world does it different, probably inspire the people here in the room and in general to see it more from a network infrastructure cost perspective. It's not so much a relationship. It's really like, you know, a commodity. It's a business thing. You set it up relatively quickly. You move on, next IX. So probably people should have a little bit more faith in peering, be a little bit more brave, go for it, and then figure out, you know, when they've done it on the way, how to deal with it. If you have too much traffic, you still can do, you know, not announce all your prefixes, do various things, but actually try it out. Instead of, you know, being a little bit shy about it. That's probably the biggest difference here.
I've got two observations listening to what you and Marco were talking about just now. First thing is Marco was talking about traffic moving around in the region. Based on some presentations I've seen, my guess is that about 90% of the traffic here is going out of region because it's either being exchanged with the rest of the world or it's being exchanged with content providers that sit in the rest of the world that might want to be here. So about 90% of the traffic is currently international. And actually, I think it'd be really interesting if one of the operators here at a future MENOG could do some analysis of what their traffic is and how much they're exchanging with their domestic partners, the regional partners, and internationally, so that we could maybe take a look at it. But so yeah, there's a 90% of it moving out, and we could probably bring that down with the peering. The second thing that I was thinking about when Christian was talking, operators sell to users, people in the street, the guy at home, the guy with the mobile. So all their income is coming from users out there. But our discussion here is about overheads. You're running your network, you're paying money to service the traffic. This is not revenue generating money, this is overheads. It seems strange that it's almost being treated in a way where you're looking at the cost and the money of it. But it's like, you have your business, you have your X million customers anyway. This is your cost to operate your business. Bring it down. Why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you have a team of people whose job is just to manage costs? It's not about generating money. It's not about how much the half circuit costs or whether you want to peer with your competitor or not. It's about bring your costs down. Surely.
I think we need to raise awareness among our communities in Arab region by holding many meetings for peering, such as MENOG peering sessions, as well as inviting incumbent operators. It's very important to raise awareness for incumbent operators about the importance of internet exchanges, as well as international carriers. So I hope you can do that in September in Doha, to see more people from incumbent operators in our Arab regions.
So what do you think of Steve's comment when he mentioned that it's possibly that the content anyway is somewhere globally, so therefore the value of peering may not be as much. So what's your take on that? Do you have an experience with that in Egypt, where you see the amount of content being hosted, most of it is external or local?
Of course. By hosting content local, it gives the operators or the internet service provider the chance to decrease the price of internet connectivity for end users. because more traffic will be local, and that's safe international bandwidths. So, instead of purchasing STM116, they will go for a portion of STM4 and so on. And from end user perspectives, that increase quality of service because delay is coming low.
But I guess it really depends on my question depends on whether you've done a study to see what the percentage of traffic or content is local versus international. Are you familiar with that, or have you?
Yes. There is many studies done by Internet Service Provider and the Ministry of Communication for calculating how much traffic for global content providers such as Google, YouTube, and so on. Can you give us
an idea what the?
For example, YouTube, we have a 60 gigabit per second for YouTube daily.
But so, kind of as an overall content, would you say 50% local, or is it closer to 90% international, 10% local? Is it just kind of a really rough?
Yeah, it's roughly now about 45 local and 55 international.
Okay. Now,
just jumping in with another number, right, then we can compare them. I haven't looked it up exactly, but I would guess 80-20. 80 international, 20 local.
Okay. And based on?
Based on my
that number,
figures?
based on, so based on what information? Is that a specific country? Are we talking about Egypt, or are we talking?
No, we talk about the region. I would say the Middle East is probably served 80% out of Europe and just have 20% local-ish.
Somebody did a presentation about Saudi Arabia a year or two ago at MENOG, and they quoted a figure saying 90-something% of websites are hosted in the US, or something like this. Do you remember this one? It was really interesting.
Yeah, that was me.
It was you.
I just wanted to add one thing, because you asked what can be done, for example. Especially I want to add something for Christian about this, let's say the peering mentality. So we see. So we invested in a peering manager. So we have Bernd, who did the presentation today, and we invested in him to have him as a dedicated peering manager to help peers to come together and to go for peering. So he is the source for all the peers to talk to, and he also identifies some issues in the peering setup and so on and so on. And as a result, we saw already a jump of the traffic. So this is one thing we actually already did, and where I see there is some positive outcome already. And when it comes to the content, I see that there is lots of local Arabic content produced here in, for example, in Abu Dhabi, in this media content production zone, also here in Dubai. But if you look at, for example, ICFlix, which is the Netflix for Arabic content, it's hosted in Germany. It's peered over DKIX, by the way, but not directly, because it's just hosted there. If you think about Shahed, it's not long time ago, it was hosted in Milano. And so on and so on. Ariba, what wants to be the local Facebook, it's hosted in London. Okay. And if you see, they don't have even an AS number.
So I'm getting that you're making an argument against peering, that you can just go internationally.
No. What I say is, what we are working now on is that we help these people to get their content local in the because we can show them that already 60% of the access users are reached over the Internet Exchange when it comes to the GCC region. So, for example, we help them to get an AS number. We help them how to manage that they can keep the local traffic local, but also use the CDN networks for the international traffic, and so on. I know you might not like that, but at the end of the day, it's to bring the local traffic here to the region, and to have it here, and to have more arguments to people for peering. So this is what we're actually doing and what we're actually working on.
In my presentation earlier, I was talking about how an exchange can create an ecosystem. So once you've got a place to come, people will come. But until you have that place, they can't. And one of the issues now is where would they host to serve the region? Which location can they host from, which will give the best latency to every country? And the answer is actually from Europe or Hong Kong or Singapore, because the risk of hosting in Dubai is that to get to Q8 it goes 300 milliseconds around the world. And I think that's a problem that needs to be solved, that you need to have, at some level there needs to be interconnection here. It doesn't have to be every single operator peering with each other, but there has to be interconnection. In Europe, if you're buying transit from somebody and to reach another country in Europe it goes via the US, you send in a complaint, you know, and if they don't fix it, you turn them off, you know, they're no good. It's a common practice. But here, we're happy to buy transit from people who have just no interconnection. I'm not just talking about the local players, I mean, but the large global networks that are present here, but they're not interconnecting, they're not peering. So we wouldn't stand for that in other areas of the world, but here we're happy to let this occur.
Yeah, yes, also in Palestine, unfortunately, there is a very, very low amount of local traffic. When we start our internet exchange point, it was around from 20 to 30 megabit per second only, local Palestinian traffic. We made many sessions in universities, also in ISO Palestine, to encourage local content providers or big local content players to even bring a replica of their content inside one of the ISPs connected to the PIX, or even in the PIX data center itself. Now we have around from 50 to 70 megabit per second local traffic, which is good so far.
And have you seen an effect of building an exchange point effect on the location of the content? Are you seeing content moving closer?
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Is that the same for you in Cairo as well?
Of course, it's the same in Cairo, but I have a question first to Steve, if you please. From your point of view or from your experience, what or who do you think should pay for the transit traffic for content providers? The host or the content owner? For example, if we have a Google or YouTube in our internet exchange, hosted in our internet exchange in Cairo, who should pay for the transit traffic for updates? Is it internet exchange or Google?
There's two different types of content that we're talking about. When I was talking before, I'm talking about the hosting of websites like the ones that Marco mentioned, or if someone here wants to set up their own personal website, where is that sitting, on whose server, which hosting company is it with, where is those hosts located? The other type of content is the global content, the Googles, the Akamai's, Microsofts, who have huge amounts of traffic and who are deploying cache nodes. So cache nodes versus traditional hosting are different, and I think what your question is if you want to encourage one of the global CDNs to deploy a cache node, who's going to pay for the transit to fill the cache? I think they should pay for it, but how they do that, if they're sitting inside a provider's network, they do it through what they agree with the provider. If you want them to come to an internet exchange, and the internet exchange is neutral, then how do you get the money for them? I think you need to have an entirely different discussion, but you need to talk to them, and you need to talk to your operators and figure out who's going to pay for them. Because in Christian's example earlier, where he's saying, you know, $150 a meg, if with this $150 a meg he's able to offload tens and tens of gigabits, he might be happy. But on the other hand, if you're a small country and you don't have that amount of traffic, the cache is less efficient, and the cost will just not make sense. And when you speak to big content, if they get a lot of reward from it, they'll be happy to pay the bill. But on the other hand, if they're not getting a lot of reward, they're going to say, no, I don't want to work with you now, or you need to pay me to do this because you're getting more benefit than me, which is a slightly more complicated argument, but hope that helps.
Yes, in Palestine, you know, the cache content only needs someone to provide these transits in order to fill the cache. In our local experience in PIX, we set a policy to set tenders for every 6 months or every year. So every peer or every internet service provider connect to PIX can take chance to provide this amount of bandwidth in order to fill the cache. The peers itself, one by one, or using tendering or something like this.
I'm selling on one hand, or I'm responsible for UA Exchange, but I'm also selling ports, for example, for DKIX. And I never got the question for who is selling the backhaul from a content provider at DKIX, for example. It's obvious that the POP is built by the content provider, that the backhaul is bought by the content provider, and so on. But when it comes to UA Exchange, it's always the same question that content providers tell you, yeah, but it has to be some kind of free period. We need somebody who sponsors maybe a rec or who sponsors this and that and that, because we bring so much value to you. Like Saleh is telling about the Google Global Cache. Yeah, somebody has to pay for the backhaul, but it's not Google. Of course, there's an argument from the content players, because this saves costs for the access providers, because the IP transit cost is very high. So I guess we will see that situation in the region for, it's coming back to cost. This situation will last as long as the costs are on a much higher level than the international level. If it's on the international level, I think this situation will going to change, because then it makes commercially sense. But at the moment, I absolutely see the point, and I see good arguments for the content players why access providers have to take care about some costs, because a caching brings added value by saving international bandwidth.
I find it interesting when we have these discussions that often the conversation and the questions goes in these same directions, where why is everybody worried about how these American, European companies are making money? You know, the Google, the Akamai, you know. Why are you worried about these guys? You know, you have your own businesses here, and a lot of the questions that are being posed, you're talking about how to get more interconnection between businesses that are local, between the local telcos, how to get the local colos operating here, how to get more colos built so that you get more content local, and so that more local people are able to do business with each other. But sometimes I feel almost like it's getting, we distract, and we start talking about tier ones that are based in Japan or in the US, or content that's based in California or something. And you know, everybody can have a conversation with Google or Akamai. If you have enough traffic, they'll bring it there, and somebody can negotiate to pay, or if it doesn't work out, they won't pay. But I don't think this is the biggest problem that you're trying to solve, as to how fast your YouTube video loads. I think the problem you're trying to solve is, you know, why is the region so fragmented, and why are you not doing more business with each other? Why are you throwing 90% of the revenue to foreign companies? You know, that's what a problem I'd like to see be solved.
Thank you. Great comment. Let's open it up for the audience to ask questions. So if anybody has any questions, please raise your hand.
Hani Abul Khair, QualityNet, Kuwait. It's more of suggestion plus question at the same time. Been discussed already that for ISP, I'm speaking as an ISP point of view. Having a transit connection in Europe is less than, money-wise, cost-effective of having peering locally within the GCC countries. And this is an ABCD for peering. Cost should be less than transit to make sense. We as an ISPs, we look for money. We sell service to customers. Our prices to customers goes down, so we should reduce our cost. So the question is, or the suggestion is, we should, as an exchanges in the GCC countries, or MENOG, or whoever, non-profit organizations, these should convince the governments of the GCC countries, or maybe the Arab countries, that they should give special rates or price for peering locally. I'm talking from my country, in Kuwait, cost for peering or transit doesn't matter. Anything outside the country have the same cost. So for me, if the cost effective to have a transit connection in Europe is the cost effective, I will go to Europe, I will not peer locally. But in the same time, for the governments to help the citizen for creating new business, as per our study that between QualityNet or Kuwait to all Arab countries, the traffic locally is less than 1%. Unfortunately, this is fact. And all the customers or websites or providers, they prefer to go to Europe or the state to host their sites or services because of the easy to change at that time, at that location. So the question or the suggestion is it possible to have something between the exchanges or maybe MENOG or other non-profit to convince the GCC countries or Arab countries, specifically maybe GCC countries, to give special rates or maybe price for local peering? For sure will lead to have a new business. Having a low latency between GCC countries will create more business for the citizen and will improve quality of service at the same time.
We have a number of studies that suggest that the short answer to the question is yes. When you have interconnection and low latency, more traffic gets exchanged and more business gets brought in. So it works like a port, in the pre-internet days. I mean, if you're a port, you start seeing the port develop and ships come in from further afield, and suddenly people start building houses, and suddenly people start bringing their trades, and it's the same. There's a few papers that are doing it. I think the question that you started with the cost, so bear in mind that the cost, the transit versus peering, almost all of that cost is in either the backhaul or the submarine cable. And in the case of Q8, you're out of the GCC, you're probably in the most difficult position with acquiring capacity because you only have a couple of options. And the pricing that you're seeing is entirely manufactured. We know that cables can operate. We know that we can buy capacity across the Atlantic for less than $10,000 for a wavelength. We don't even buy SDH circuits across the Atlantic anymore. We just buy wavelengths, and in here for the price of a wavelength in the Atlantic, I can maybe get a fraction of an STM1 if I'm lucky. So it's kind of artificial, which means it's difficult for other people to overcome the issue. It can only be overcome either through the operators themselves or through some regulatory interference. Now, having said that, here in Dubai, with the UAEX being present, I've been looking at the price of transit, and I've been looking at the fact that operators are competing for the transit, international operators, but they're all now present in these facilities. Datamina here, and we're seeing Smart Hub in Fujairah as well. And this pricing has come down, like it's 20% of what it was 2 years ago, and it's going to continue to come down. I don't think that's necessarily because of any regulatory change or anything. I think it's because we created this port, and people come, and people put pressure on the pricing, and when there's an artificial barrier in the pricing, you see it disappear quickly. So, coming back to your question of, hey, if my peering and my transit are about the same price, why should I peer? You only have two arguments, I think, left in that. performance. We know that if you have control over how you exchange traffic, that you have the control to make sure that that traffic is being exchanged in the best way, that you don't have if you're using a third party and you're giving up control to them. And as we saw very often, their business interests are not the same as your business interests, and if they're sending the traffic around the world for economics, that doesn't help you. And the second reason is that there's a few operators in Kuwait. You know, who's going to build the nicest network first? And what's going to happen when they grow in size and they start attracting traffic to their network because people want to buy from them and not someone else? You know, do you want to be that guy, or do you want your competitors to be that guy?
Question. How many of you in the room have fiber assets you are selling as a wholesale to other providers? Do we actually talk about IP providers here, or do we have wavelengths and fiber providers here as well, which actually are quite happy with the current price for the backhaul between countries? Any fiber provider here? Nobody has fiber? Nobody resells it? Just IP people in the room? Kind of hard to believe. Anyway, when it comes back to your question regarding the regulator, I think this is more an issue for the region and for each individual country. As an external to the region and as a foreign company, when we actually meet regulators, we try to highlight, and as Steve said, there are various studies about, that if the price is too high, then people don't come. And you have seen that with parts of the Arabic content is actually outside of the region. If you would lower the entrance bar either for startups or lower the entrance bar to bring actually the content back, and this is an interconnection and a price question, then you have much more volume, which also basically gives you more money. But as some of the local providers, the ones with the fiber, for example, prefer to keep a certain price because, you know, that's an easy revenue for them. Why should they actually go lower? And if the regulator doesn't do much about it, then this is just what the people have to pay if they sit on top of it. The foreign companies like Akamai cannot do much besides highlight that and actually come where it makes halfway economic sense to the region and help out there. But the regulators itself and the price structure is made in the region. It is not made from foreigners.
You asked what we can do as an internet exchange point. So I'm traveling the region since 3 years now, almost 3 years, and for the internet exchange for the UAE since October 2012. And whenever I talk to an operator, we always talk also about the price. So basically, as an IXP, the only thing I really can do is lobbying, because the only influence I have the influence on the price of our ports. But having said that, with having some kind of success and with 30 members, it is already a success for the region, because we have almost members from all countries from the region. I see something is moving now. So it started last year, and when you just think about the access prices for reaching the internet exchange, this half circuit, so which started as a half circuit and now has a different name. It's called, in this case, I'm talking about the data MENA access, but inshallah we will see it in different data centers this year as well. It came down when we started from 200,000 K monthly to 15,000 K monthly now for 10 gig. So by having more and more members, having more and more attraction and having more interest in it, prices are going to be lowered. And if you think about connections between the countries, I also heard about new initiatives and about new pricing where I say, wow, it was not, I couldn't imagine it in the past. So as an internet exchange, we don't have a direct influence. We cannot go to the regulators and tell them, hey, you have to lower your price levels, you have to do something about it. We only can explain people that there can be built much more business here if we don't have a prohibitive price situation and if people work together. We only can do a lobbying, and by being somehow successful, we can build a matter of fact, because we can prove a concept. And that's what we are actually doing. And this is what we are working on, or what I'm also personally working on. And what I also believe is that so I just compare it 2 years back, the MENOG, when we did the peering discussion. It looked totally different than today. And I think in 2 years' time, it will be a wholly different discussion.
Do you have a comment, Haytham?
Yeah, I have a comment as a regulator. So as a regulator, we have 18 submarine cable systems crossing Egypt. So there is an initiative by a Minister of Communication to build an international internet hub in Egypt to facilitate peering between international carriers and hosting content providers, and also for cloud computing in Egypt.
May I ask who would operate that IX? Would it be the government, the regulator, or a neutral third-party company?
No, it's open for investors, for third party to build this international.
Sounds good.
Okay.
We have one more question. Go ahead.
Yes, the question is, my name is Ma'an Biseso. I'm from Zone Technologies in Palestine. I'm also a peer at the Palestine Internet Exchange. Actually, I have a comment and a question to Christian. You said that Akamai can do anything. I think, or the other big content provider, I think the content provider, they are very important aspect in the development and the viability of the internet exchange points. And I would just want to make two important points that are, I think, will put things in perspective. Historically, all content providers are usually aligning themselves with the big PTTs. And those PTTs usually host all the content providers for many of the big for many of the big content providers, including Google Cache, whatever. And at this point, it's financially, it's a very important selling point for them and competitive point to keep this, to keep their network from being peered by other local networks. We've seen this in Palestine, we've seen this in Jordan. By the way, in Jordan there is no internet exchange point, and practically everybody in Jordan peers in Germany or somewhere else, not in Jordan. And because of many of these things, what I'm trying to say, is there a way that we can have a win-win-win situation where the content providers will win by providing very good and having a strategy of aligning themselves with the internet exchange point, as well as the other ISPs will be able to connect to them to provide, by the way, by doing this, it will provide the content and the volume so that the ISPs will be able to get better pricing from the internet exchange points at a very good price, because now there are many bigger content, much bigger data, more value for them and for their customers at a much lower price. We're saying that the price is a big factor, as well as what will make this price lower is the volume or the big content that it's available within the internet exchange points.
You mentioned various points. I want to comment on one or two of them and see if I understood them correctly. So, a couple of things. Akamai has a complete open peering policy. So if we are an IX, we peer with everyone. Everyone who is capable of typing in 3 lines of BGP config and bring up a session. This is true for all the big ones. This is true for all the small ones. We have that concept of on-net clusters where we put clusters in the network. They are not exclusive to big ISPs, incumbents, or anything. We give them to everyone. And that is probably a little disclaimer, if we are approved from a legal perspective to deploy in a specific country, and not all of them are open, but in the countries we deploy, we do not make a difference. The small ones get servers, the big ones get servers. We deploy everywhere. There is no exclusivity. So we actually treat all the same. We do not prefer one or the other. Going to the IX, I had a conversation actually with the CEO of Mix about it. Valerie said, well, you as a content player has a responsibility against the internet, and also from a social and ethic perspective. And I found that quite an interesting comment. Going along that line, as I said before, we are actually helping internet exchanges. You know, we are on quite a lot of them. We even found them. We participate in the community, being on boards, founding them, actually sponsoring sometimes gears to some of them, which are non-for-profit. So I think the whole open peering concept, we are not just living it, we're actually fostering it as much as we can. And this is not even, you know, a direct commercial benefit. This is because we believe in the concept. We are often, if a new IX is founded and it halfway makes sense for us, we are one of the firsts there. Which, same at the UIAX, it makes just sense to have the content anchors, as we call it, the Googles, us, the other content provider there as early as possible, because that attracts the eyeballs and the ISPs. So we are normally among the first, as long as we're not paying, you know, much more than it is transit. So in that case, it's not just a performance question, because at this time there's actually not many providers there. It is actually helping the community. And I think this is an act we have, or something we can do, and probably a responsibility, if you like, we have. But when it comes back to the regulator part, in that case, we just have an advising role and then highlighting role. As we are not part of the particular countries from where regulator is active, I think that is where our responsibility ends.
Thank you. Thank you. That brings us to the end of the peering panel session. I'll hand it over now to, thank you to our panelists. Now I'll hand it over to Garab with more of the peering personals.
Thank you, Osama. So you guys can go. Steve can stay, right? Everyone else. Steve can stay. Steve, you are first up. So you are next. Yep. So as I've said since the morning, we're doing peering personals. This is what we need. At the end of every session, we'll give you a minute to talk about network. And I'm still waiting for regional networks to send me slides. So please do. We still have one more option to send slides. And, you know, there is a shortened URL for it. But if you go to the MENOG voting agenda page, you'll find a template which looks like this. And please send it to that email address, and we'll get you in the next one. For this session, we have Steve. I think, let me find the presentation for you. This is not the one. Yeah. No, it's fine.
So, peering personal, third time on the stage today. We're IX 43531, and we're peering in all the major exchanges across Europe and the US, and we're also peering at the UAE exchange. We typically peer with root servers. We're open to peering with networks we exchange a lot of traffic with. If we don't exchange a lot of traffic, you can see us if you peer with the root servers at the exchange. And if you want to peer, email peering@ixreach.com, and we'll get back to you.
Thank you, Steve. The next we have is Marco for the K-root server.
Yeah, so thank you. Yeah, we're RIPE NTC. We also operate the K-root servers, which is one of the 13 root servers. We're AS25152. We're in 17 locations. Our primary ones are London, Amsterdam, Frankfurt, Tokyo, and Miami. We've also got 2 local nodes, Abu Dhabi, when you pair at Emix, we're present there, so you can connect to us. And we've got a node inside Odoo in Doha, so if you're pairing with AS8781, you can reach that machine as well. If you want to pair with us, we've got an open policy. We don't take much traffic, of course, because it's a root server. It's balanced. It mostly adds resilience for your customers having a connection with Kroot. Contact dns@ripe.net or talk to my colleague Kave Ranjbar or me over here. And more information can be found on k.rootservers.org. Thank you.
Oh wow, guess who's next? It's me. So that's me, Limelight Networks. Our main ASN is 22822, but in this region, we also have two more ASNs, 60261 and 12411. We are a content provider. We do multiple TBPS of traffic. Our peering policy is not open, it's selective, so you need to come and talk to me why that is so. Here in the region, we are on Smart of IX and, well, Fujairah, but, well, I put Dubai there, GCC IX in Bahrain, and the nearest locations from the region would be Marseille, where we should be up very soon at the France IX, Singapore, and if you can peer in Mumbai, you can also talk to us there, but I don't think that is possible for international carriers. Our peering DB entry is AS22822. We'll find information about all these ASNs and so on. So you can talk to me or email me at my email address or at peeringteam@limelight.com. Thank you. Now next I have is Etisalat.
Good afternoon, everybody. This is Yahya from Etisalat MX. Okay, we have got ASN 8966. We are available in all the major exchanges across the globe. Okay, and being the home turf UAE, we are connected to all the regional operators, ISPs here. Our peering policy is selective. You need to talk to us, then we'll open our routes. And peering DB is well informed. The information is updated there. Look forward to peer you all. Thank you.
And next I have EasyNet Global Services. As I said, if you don't feel like writing a slide, just sending me your peering DB page and I'll put it up here.
Hello there, I'm Nigel Titley from EasyNet. We don't have representation in the region, but we do peer pretty well everywhere else, at least in Europe, North America, and a little bit in the Middle East, Far East. We're a corporate VPN provider largely, but we also run an internet transit service as well. We peer in most of the major peering points in Europe, links, AM6, DKIX, and so forth, although not Northern Europe, I'm afraid. Our peering policy is selective, but not very selective. Basically, we'd like to see a little bit of traffic, probably a meg or more, but the exception to that is if you can offer us IPv6 peering, we'll peer with anybody. That's about it. Just have a word with me or send an email to peering@easynet.com.
That's the slides I have. Anyone else interested? Because I think I have 1 minute and a half. Philip, any housekeeping announcements or we go for lunch? So it's lunchtime. We go for lunch. Come back in an hour, I think. Come back in an hour. Lunch is at the same location we had yesterday. An hour and a half. Okay. Well, if the chair says so, hour and a half. So we go out on the left, on the right, you go further down. There's a restaurant, you need to have one of these. Otherwise, they won't allow you into the restaurant. So make sure you have your... Huh? Slow. The restaurant is called Slows. Okay. That's it. Thank you very much, and I hope to see more peering personnel for the next one. I think I only have one right now, so, and exchange points as well for the last session. Thank you. Yeah, I got the exchange points here.